much, Madam Speaker. As always, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to speak on behalf of the residents of my riding of Davenport on the debate that we have today. And it is a debate from our opposition, and I will read it out because I always like making sure that if people ever watch this in the future that they know what I'm talking about. So the motion that we're debating is that given that the government has announced a temporary 3-year pause to the federal carbon tax to home heating oil, the House call on the government to extend that pause to all forms of home heating. And Madam Speaker, I don't think you'll be surprised when I tell you that the government will not be supporting this motion, and I'm very happy to explain why. And before I go on, I will say to you that I am sharing my time with the very honourable member from Thunder Bay, Rainy River. So today's motion from the Leader of the Honourable Opposition does not provide context of what is happening in Canada today around home heating, inflation, and our federal government's aggressive plan to decarbonize and meet both our 2030 and our 2050 targets. Indeed, Madam Speaker, if you read the way the motion is actually phrased, it's easy for any Canadian who's reading it to misunderstand what our federal government actions are. And in today's case, in this motion, it's based on the misconception that all forms of home heating have the same cost to the consumer, which is not the case. Late last week, our federal government took action to temporarily pause the application of the federal fuel charge on heating oil, not because it is a source of home heating, but because it is the most expensive form of home heating. And it's important to note, Madam Speaker, that the vast majority of those who have heating oil are among the lowest income Canadians in Canada today. Madam Speaker, we know that lower income Canadians face particular hardship, particularly with the high cost of inflation today, and we know that there's little or no extra money for anything extra beyond the basic living costs. Low income and rural residents have been trapped in a vicious cycle where they are stuck having to pay for the most expensive form of home heating, the cost of which is preventing them from investing in cleaner, more affordable forms of home heating. And I'm pleased to let you know, Madam Speaker, that last week our Prime Minister made an announcement, which we call our new energy affordability package. And I'll go through some of the basics because I think it's very relevant to the debate that we're having today. Our federal government's moving ahead with doubling the pollution price rebate, or what we call the climate action incentive payment to our rural community, increasing it from 10 to 20% of the baseline amount starting in April 2020. We know, Madam Speaker, that people who live in rural communities face unique realities, and this measure will help put even more money back into the pockets of families dealing with higher energy costs because they live outside of large urban cities. Our federal government is also moving ahead with a temporary 3-year pause to the federal price on pollution, which on the deliveries of heating oil in all jurisdictions where the federal fuel charge is in effect. And Madam Speaker, it's important for me to stress that this would be applied right across Canada. This pause would begin in less than 2 weeks. While the fuel charge is already returned to consumers through the pollution price rebate, this temporary pause would save a household that uses heating oil $250 at the current rate on average, while the federal government works with provinces to roll out heat pumps and phase out oil for heating over the longer term. And a final part of the announcement is that our federal government has said we will work with provinces and territories to help Canadians save money over the long term by making it easier to switch to an electric heat pump to heat their homes. We announced a number of measures that will be first piloted in Atlantic Canada, and we truly hope that other provinces and territories will sign on moving forward. Now, Madam Speaker, the targeted action we are taking with our new energy affordability package will break that vicious cycle and save rural Canadians thousands of dollars a year over the long term, while allowing us to continue to move as aggressively as possible towards our climate action targets and decarbonizing our economy. The pause on the fuel charge on heating oil, in concert with our Strengthen Oil to Heat Pump program, will create a window of opportunity for people to make the switch to cheaper, cleaner heat. With our Strengthen Oil to Heat Pump affordability program, we are partnering with provinces and territories to increase the amount of federal funding that eligible homeowners can receive for installing a heat pump from $10,000 to $15,000, adding up to an additional $5,000 in grant funding to match provincial and territorial contributions via co-delivery arrangements. This would make the average heat pump and installation free for low to medium income households as we continue to minimize upfront costs and make federal programs even easier to access for all households. Madam Speaker, on average, households who switch from oil to cold climate heat pumps to heat and cool their homes save up to $2,500 per year on home energy bills. And I think that's a very important point to keep on stressing, because heating oil is one of the most polluting forms of home heat, which making the switch not only it will protect Canadians from the costs associated with climate change over the long term, but it'll also help to reduce emissions, which is what we're trying to do as we move towards our climate targets. And make no mistake, Madam Speaker, these costs are real. As confirmed by science and research, the cost of anthropogenic climate change, which is primarily driven by carbon pollution, will be devastating. The Canadian Climate Institute has concluded that climate change is already costing Canadian households billions of dollars, and these costs are just the tip of the iceberg. In its 2020 report on climate risks and their implications for the insurance industry in Canada, the Insurance Bureau of Canada concluded that the average annual severe weather claims paid by insurers in Canada could more than double over the next 10 years, increasing from $2.1 billion a year to $5 billion a year, and must be accompanied by an increase in premium income. These are billions of dollars in costs that will need to be borne by Canadians, Madam Speaker. And that's why our government has put a price on carbon pollution since 2019 to ensure it is no longer free to pollute. Putting a price on carbon pollution reduces emissions and encourages innovation. It encourages reductions across the economy while giving households and businesses the flexibility to decide when and how to make changes. And it creates incentives for Canadian businesses to develop and adopt new low-carbon products, processes, and services. To ensure that the system is both effective and affordable, the bulk of proceeds from the price on carbon pollution goes straight back into the pockets of Canadians in provinces where the fuel charge applies, with 8 out of 10 Canadians in these provinces continuing to get more money back through the climate action incentive payments than they pay as a result of the carbon price. In provinces where the federal system applies, a family of 4 can now receive up to $1,500 a year under our plan. And this means our climate plan is both effective and affordable. And our new energy affordability package will make it even more so by supporting the transition to cleaner and cheaper forms of home heating. And Madam Speaker, as I get into the final pages of my remarks, I believe it's important for me to say that making it free to pollute will not save Canadians money. It will cost them money in the long run, while endangering Canadians and jeopardizing the natural environment we all depend on. There are better ways to make life more affordable for Canadians without destroying the environment and incurring more devastating costs further down the road. We can do so by delivering support where it is most effective and to those who need it most. And this has guided our actions from day one. This includes supporting about 3.5 million families annually through the tax-free Canada Child Benefit, with families this year receiving up to $7,437 per child under the age of 6, and up to $6,275 per child aged 6 to 17. It includes increasing old age security benefits for seniors aged 75 and older by 10% as of July 2022, which is providing more than $800 in additional support to full pensioners. And it includes reducing fees for regulated childcare by 50% on average, delivering regulated childcare that costs on average of just $10 a day by 2026. These are the right ways to make life more affordable, Madam Speaker. Extending the fuel charge pause to sources that are far cheaper and less polluting than fuel oil, as proposed by today's motion, is not the right way to make life affordable. I therefore call on the House to reject today's motion as our government continues working with our partners in all provinces and territories to explore further options to lower the cost of energy bills for all Canadians, while also lowering emissions and fighting climate change. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak today and to make this very clear. I'm now ready for some questions.